Well, it says on the piece of paper, the aim of the Sorrell Foundation is to inspire creativity in young people and to improve quality of life through design. And that was 11 years ago when we wrote that, when we set the charity up. That hasn't changed. But what's been added now is that we realise that through the work we're doing, it's also possible to try and help young people get on the pathway to studying, perhaps in further or higher education, art and or design, and then getting careers in the creative industries.
Some of the young people from our early projects who are now in their mid-20s have stayed in touch, and they've got inspired by working with fabulous architects and went on to do things like structural engineering, and they've just, at Cambridge, and then we've helped them get placements with good architectural practices, and so the relationships have gone on. So that's, so we're just following through that, really. What we discovered in the early years is now being fed on to the next generation.
Very early on in Newell and Sorrell, we're talking a long time ago, we started being asked to do free work for schools and with schools, and we started to do that. And I guess we did this for about 20 years in business, on and off. And we became quite familiar with the way that schools work. When we got into the 90s, we started getting to the point where we both felt slightly uncomfortable about the way we would go into schools. Like most designers, set a project. The kids would do some work, you put it on the wall, and everyone says great, and then you go away. And so we had the idea of what some people describe as a role reversal approach. So instead of going into schools to set projects for the kids to do, we decided to go into schools and ask the kids to set a brief for a project which was about design which would improve quality of life in the school for everybody. And once they'd created a brief, which we helped them with doing, we would then appoint a designer to work for them, literally to work for them as a client team, just like a client team in any organisation in the world, except this time they might be as young as 5 or 6 or 12 to 14.
It worked for every child, but it was noticeable, marked improvements with the disaffected kids. And that was all through just being responsible, managing the project and representing the school. The fascinating thing was as soon as they had to represent the school, instead of rubbishing it, they'd talk it up. So that was absolutely delightful, absolutely delightful.
So one of the tricks is to make the kids informed and inspired clients. So, for example, if they want to redo their school canteen, then probably they haven't been to many restaurants. So they've got no reference points in the conversation with their designer. So they can't say, well, I think it ought to be a bit like the Ivy, for example. But of course, school food, lunchtime, is the fastest fast food in the world. 1,400 children 1 hour, that's faster than anything. So the basic idea is, what we do with the architects or designers is we go on a tour of restaurants, and you'd go to fast food restaurants, McDonald's, Yo Sushi, Wagamama, Juice Bar. They'd take photographs, they'd film it, they'd ask questions, they'd find out about the way it all works, they'd talk to the staff, the customers, and in the end they're more expertise about fast food restaurants than anybody, and that means they can engage in a conversation with their architect or designer.
So you're sitting in a restaurant and they're looking around and they're suddenly realising, you can just see them realising that everything around them has been designed. And then they're starting to develop their own critical awareness, and they're starting to realise if something doesn't work or if they really don't like it. So they suddenly, it enhances their whole life because they're suddenly seeing things.
We're very interested in the young people getting out of this, in this engagement, which is really 3 things. We're interested in them developing their critical appreciation of design, because after all, if we have a world where people understand design much, much better, wouldn't that be fantastic for them as well as for everybody else? So it's critical appreciation. But secondly, it's also the fact that they're all consumers of design, and they're all their lives they'll be consumers of design. So helping them to be better consumers and more aware consumers, I think is very important. And the third thing is that they will also, some of them, be clients of design. I mean, lots of them might end up being in client teams in big companies or small companies where they will be briefing and retaining designers. And all our lives, we've been surrounded by people who complain about terrible clients. Well, we're very interested in good clients, and when you have a great client to work with, we always say that the best work is always when you have a great relationship between the client and the designer. Well, wouldn't it be marvellous if more clients had that critical appreciation?
Working in our own practice, you just realise that design touches everything. But working in the Sorrell Foundation, the excitement has been seeing that moment of realisation with young people. I think that's been the big trigger, and also seeing turnaround in some people. So they suddenly find what it is that they want to do. That's the thing. So that's the magical bit.
I think also the simple fact is everything around us is designed by someone. Absolutely everything made by human beings is designed by someone. So someone decides, and isn't it awful that so much of it is not very good? So we think a world where there is much, much, much better design is bound to be a better world. And I, personally didn't know anything about design when I was a kid. I think the earlier you start to encounter it and understand it and see what a difference it can make to your life, whether it's good or whether it's bad, the better. We developed a huge amount of knowledge about the way young people think and feel about the use of design in their lives. And we've actually got that knowledge in the form of publications, it's in print, we've got a huge amount of film, photographs. Over the last few years we've been approached by quite a few organisations who'd like to access it, especially researchers of all kinds into the way young people behave and think. So right now we're working out how to do that, and what we would really like to do is to create a real archive which we can then make available in some way to people who want to study this body of knowledge, body of evidence. The other two things which we see for the future as being important are, first of all, the National Art and Design Saturday Club. We have decided to revive the idea of Saturday morning classes for 14 to 16-year-olds. We've given it this grand name to try and get people to think about it as a serious national initiative. And as of today, we have 14 colleges or unis providing those classes in different parts of the country.
It's about 400 kids at the moment involved.
If we could get a kind of critical mass of people joining this initiative, there could be several thousand kids every Saturday morning benefiting from free tuition, which is given by the tutors in the colleges and unis.
And the other one is the Design Club, which is this idea of an in-school club for design, where they watch a film about a specific piece of design, where it's fashion or a piece of furniture or a car, and they understand the whole process. They understand about how the design was conceived, how the product is made, how it's refined and how it's marketed. They can then debate it, they can do a criticism of the design, whether they like it or not, and then they submit it.
What we want to see, what we hope to see, is there's a kind of legacy from the work we've done, which is happening in different ways in different places. I think exposure to great art is something which is absolutely inspiring and enriching and rewarding for anybody. And it feeds, if you're in the design world, I think it absolutely feeds into your understanding and knowledge and ability to create great design. And that's something I found personally all my life incredibly important. And it's great to see these kids standing in front of, they come in and say to us, I've just seen this amazing painting. And
it's actually very true though, when you're creating a brand or an identity, or you're creating design for a client, you straight away, the first thing you do is look at reference points. You try and find inspiration, don't you? You open art books, you go and see an exhibition. You try and find something that's going to trigger an idea. And I think it's the same for young people when they're starting off. You know, they're like blotting paper. You just dip them in as much as you possibly can, let them soak up whatever might inspire them. To inspire some kids, that's it.
Yeah, that'll do.